All right, guys, so I've gotten a few questions on question number 18 on our study guide, so I'm going to go ahead and make a video for you. Hopefully this helps you out. So it says in rhombus ABCD, so I'm immediately going to draw it. Okay, and label it. A, B, C, D, and I know it's a rhombus, so I know that all of these sides are equal. All right, I know the measure of ADC, so the measure of this angle here is x squared minus 11. Okay, and the measure of CBD, so clearly there is a diagonal there, so CBD, so this angle right here, this half angle is 4x minus 1. Okay, I want to find the measure of this angle right here. We don't know. Okay, so in this one, you have to know, one, you have to know your properties, but two, there's some algebra here that you guys may or may not have forgotten. All right, so let's remember that this whole angle is the x squared minus 11. This, I guess, half angle or half of the entire corner is 4x minus 1. All right, so we know this is a rhombus, okay? And so we know a rhombus is a parallelogram. And for all parallelograms, we know that opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so that means that angle ABC is congruent to angle ADC. Okay, and then we also know that it's a rhombus, and therefore the diagonals, property of the rhombus is the diagonals bisect the corner angles, which means that if this here is 4x minus 1, then this here has to be 4x minus 1. Okay, so that means that angle ABD is congruent to angle CBD. All right, so if opposite angles are congruent, so this angle over here and this angle over here is the same, and then you know each of these are the same because that's the property of a parallelogram. So what I can get is that x squared minus 11 is going to equal 2 times 4x minus 1, or 4x minus 1 plus 4x minus 1, same thing. All right, let's go ahead and make this look a little prettier. Equals, if I distribute this, 8x minus 2. Now, I have a quadratic equation because my highest power is a 2. Okay, so anytime I have a quadratic equation, I want to make it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 8x and add 2. Subtract 8x and add 2. So those and those cancel out. I get equals to 0. And on the left I have x squared minus 8x minus 9 equals to 0. Okay, so that's the geometry part. Now it's the algebra part. So there's a couple different ways we can do this, and I'm going to show you both ways, and then you can kind of decide which one you like or which works better, or which you understand better. That's on you. But I'm going to show you both ways. So if you understand one way and the other way confuses you, don't even think about the other way. Okay, you don't need to know both of these ways in this class. All right, so first of all, something I want to review is anytime you have a quadratic equation, so the highest power is 2, that means you have 2 solutions. Okay, if the highest power of an equation is 8, so you have like 5x to the 8th plus 7x to the 7th or whatever. The highest power is 8, that means you have 8 solutions. If the highest power is 89, you have 89 solutions. That's what the highest power of an equation tells you. It's how many solutions you have. So we're actually going to get 2 different solutions for this question, and then I'm going to show you which one we use. So the first method I'm going to show you how to solve this is called the quadratic formula. Now, for those of you who took Algebra 1 at the high school, this is probably going to be what you're more comfortable with. You'll go over this again in Algebra 2, and this will actually be your best friend in Algebra 2. For those of you who took Algebra 1 at the middle school, you'll probably be more comfortable with factoring, and I'll show you that after I do this. So the quadratic formula, it's just a formula. It's big, long, and it's scary, but it's really, really good. So it's negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, this is the quadratic formula. This doesn't change. Okay, and this is for any equation that's ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Notice it has to be equal to z, has to be equal to 0, and we do have it equal to 0. All right, so notice my a is the number in front of my x squared. So I don't have a number in front of the x squared, so I'm just multiplying it by 1, so think of it as a 1. So I can say in this equation, my a is 1. My b is the number in front of the x. Well, don't forget this negative, so my b would be a negative 8. And my c is the number that stands alone. Don't forget the negative again, so my c then is negative 9. Okay, now I'm going to take these a, b, and c, and I'm just going to plug it into this formula. Okay, so I have negative b, so negative, my b is negative 8, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so once again, negative 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 9, all over 2a, which is 1. Okay, so I've just taken this a, b, and c and plugged it into the a, b, and c here. All right, let's clean this up now. This is ugly and scary, but if I clean it up, it's not that bad. So negative 8 would just be a positive 8, plus or minus square root of negative 8 squared is negative 8 times negative 8, which is a positive 64, minus 4 times 1 is 4, times a negative 9 is a negative 36, all over 2 times 1 is 2. All right, simplify it a little bit more. 8 plus or minus square root of 64. Well, guys, a negative times a negative is a positive 36 all over 2. So 8 plus or minus square root of 64 plus 36 is 100 all over 2. 8 plus or minus, well, square root of 100, guys, is 10 over 2. Now let's go back to where I said we have two solutions. Let me get a different color here. Two solutions. So one of the solutions is with this a plus, the other is with it is a minus. So I'm going to come back up here. So one of them would be 8 plus 10 over 2, and the other one would be 8 minus 10 over 2. Okay, well 8 plus 10 over 2 is 18 over 2. And then this 8 minus 10 over 2 would be negative 8 over 2. So this solution, 18 over 2, I'd have x equals 9, or x equals negative 8 over 2 is a negative 4. So here are my two solutions for my one quadratic problem. Okay, that's one way you can do it. Okay, now the other way is by factoring. And like I said, most of you that took Algebra 1 in 8th grade probably factored more than you did the quadratic formula. All right, so when we factor, we want two things. Okay, we want two numbers that multiply to a times c, and the same two numbers that add to b. Okay, So once again, we're going to go back to this equation here. Okay, we have x squared minus 8x minus 9 equals to 0. And then we still need our a, b, and our c. So our a is 1, b is negative 8, c is negative 9. Okay, so we want two numbers that multiply to a times c. So they multiply to a times c. So we want two numbers that multiply to a times c is negative 9. And we want two numbers that add to b. Well, b is negative 8, so they add to negative 8. Okay, and I've always done it with this x. Okay, so we want two numbers that multiply to a times c, so they multiply to negative 9, and then they add to negative 8. Okay, well, if they multiply to a times c, and don't worry about the negative for now, let's find the multiples of 9. We have 1 and 9, we have 3 and 3. Well, we want a negative 9, so one of them has to be negative. Well, if I put a negative in front of this 9, and I add this pair, negative 9 plus 1, that is negative 8. So my two numbers are negative 9 and positive 1. Okay, so I use these two numbers to factor. So x minus 9, the minus 9 and minus 9, x plus 1 equals to 0. Okay, the hard part's over. All right, so now I want to know, when I multiply these two numbers is equal to 0, well, that means one of these has to be equal to 0. So in this case, how do I make x minus 9 equal to 0? Well, when x is 9. In this case, how do I make x plus 1 equal to 0? Well, that's when x is negative 1. So my two solutions are 9 and negative 1. Guys, I messed up here. 8 minus 10 is a negative 2. Holy moly. Which is a negative 1. That looks better. Okay, so I did get the same thing after I found my mistake. So 9 and negative 1, 9 and negative 1. All right, I have one more thing that I need to do. Okay, so I found that x equals 9, and I found that x equals negative 1. Okay, so I need to go and I need to make sure both of these work. So I notice here this is a negative, and that doesn't always necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but it kind of reads red flag. Now, if I plug this negative in and I get a positive angle, that's fine, but I'm just going to make sure I can do that. So I have 4 times x minus 1. That's the measure of this angle here. Well, 4 times negative 4 is, or 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, minus 1 gives me a negative 5. So that, if I allowed my x to equal negative 1, that means this angle measure is negative 5 degrees, which I can't have. Okay, so x equals negative 1 does not work. Okay, so now if I plug in 9, so 4 times 9 minus 1, 36 minus 1, that's 35 degrees. That's good. Okay. So x squared plus, or minus 11, sorry, minus 11 would be 81 minus 11 gives me 70 degrees. So that's good too, because this is double this. So we're good. So my x here has to be 9. Okay. Now the question didn't ask what is x. My question asked what is the measure of angle BAD. Okay. Well, remember, back to parallelograms, that means consecutive angles are supplementary. So they equal 180. So if this is 70, that means this angle has to be 110 degrees, which is our final answer.